All right, here we are. Hopefully, this is working. Let's have a look. Cool. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Christian Dating Game podcast. I'm going to be doing this as a live Q&A every week from now on at this time, which is for you guys, I believe, Thursday, 9 p.m. EST. For me, it's 8 a.m. in the morning on a Friday. So, I'm here, and as people filter in, I've got my coffee. I'm going to be drinking my coffee and going through all your dating questions, basically. So this is going to be live on every platform that I'm on. It's going to be live on YouTube. It's going to be live on Twitter, and it's going to be live on Instagram as well. Now, for the people who are watching on Instagram, it will not stay around for the full time. It will end after an hour. That's just something that I've got to deal with. It's something to do with Instagram. So for the people who are also watching the recording, this is something to be aware of. So I am going to be recording this. I don't know if it stays live on Twitter. I don't really know how this works, but it should be recorded on YouTube. So you will be able to record it live on YouTube every week. So yeah, that's how it's going to roll from now on. I appreciate there's 4 of you here already. There's 5 of you joining on the platforms. If you guys want to leave comments, if you want to ask questions as we go through this, please do, because I've got some questions that have already come through to me. People have DM'd me some questions, and some people have emailed me questions as well. But please leave your questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll get to them and I'll answer them, because really what the purpose of me deciding to do these lives every week is that I've had a bit of a shift in the way that I'm viewing my content, my dating content, my brand, Dynastic Dating, that as I've switched to helping Christian men with their dating problems, because I think this is my perspective, and you guys can, give your comments, and I'll be curious to hear what you think about this. But I just think the general quality of Christian dating advice is really, really poor. There's issues with the kind of conventional dating advice, which is basically mainly written by women for women, or it's very much written from a very not very nuanced perspective. It's more, I get the impression people are more bothered about presenting themselves as a good Christian rather than necessarily actually helping people. And there's some issues with that. There's not enough nuance. It's more about kind of almost towing a certain line, which I don't think is a bad thing. And I understand why people do that. And I think they are trying to help. But I think we need room for kind of a third way, because what's happening with this really poor quality conventional dating advice is that Christian men, are falling into red pill advice, which is not good either. And obviously, this is something that I've come out of. That's where I got my initial online growth, was talking about this stuff. So it's not healthy in the long run. And I want to provide a third way for guys. And I actually want to create a bit of a movement that changes the way that the church actually talks about dating. And this is one of the ways that I want to do this. And part of this transition is I'm also transitioning and wanting to provide more of a service. This is still a business. I don't want to, try and BS about that or lie about that. But I'm trying to put much more of a service-based mindset where I want to try and serve you guys as best I can. And obviously, the best way that I can serve people and know that I'm serving them is by working one-on-one with people. That's a way that I really know through my coaching that I can 100% be impacting people. I can be improving their lives. I can be making things better for them. But not everyone's ready for that. Not everyone needs that. And I don't, when you're posting content, you tend not to get a huge amount of feedback back from people, understandably. And this is a way that I believe that I can better serve you guys. So I'm going to do this every week. I want you to ask me questions. I want you to engage in this. And if you have any questions about what I'm saying, let me know. Let's make this as engaging as possible so that I can best serve you. That's ultimately what I want to do. And that's a big shift in my focus just as a whole in my content and my business that I really do want to help people as best I can. Now, a big part of my desire to do this as well is that I'm making this more of my ministry. Now, my first ministry will always be my family. This is a mentality I've had for a while, where my ministry is my family, right? These are the people I most help. That's what I'm going to give the most impact to. I have two sons, one who's no longer with us, and one who is 17 months old, and obviously my wife as well, and my extended family. But this business, this content, I have a platform where I can help people. I have a platform where I can help move some of the discussions around dating in the church. And, I have a network that hopefully will buy into this and will help push this forward. But also it's the way that I can, again, as I say, actively serve people through my business. So this live stream is kind of part of that changing focus. And it's going to be every week at the same time. And hopefully we can build this into something where it can be a really, really great and positive experience for everyone on whatever platform you're watching on, whether you're on Twitter, whether you're on YouTube, whether you are on Instagram as well. So yeah, I just want to thank you all for joining me. Now, before we do go any further, I would just like to say a little prayer for this time, both for me and for you guys. I'll keep it short. I won't overextend it, but I do think that it will be a good start to this, to really I hope that we can make it as a blessing as possible for all of us. So just please take a moment with me while I pray out loud for us all. Dear our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to be able to come together and to allow me to share some wisdom, hopefully, with all the people that are watching this. I pray that you will guide me in this, that I can best help those who have tuned in. I'm thankful for their presence, Lord. Pray that we can have good questions that can help grow and develop these guys' understandings of dating, relationships, and anything else they need help with. Pray that you'll bless me to be able to do this, and this will be a time of growth for us all. So Lord, we thank you and pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you very much, guys. So let's get into it. So I had a few different questions, some of which were very good, actually, that I'm sure will help you. And again, as we're going through this, please leave your comments. Please ask me questions as we're going through this. So the first of these that I received was from my email, and this gentleman asked me, he said, I'm 31 and single. My social circle has shrunk over the years. What are some good ideas on how to meet new people and women? I often don't have anyone to go out with, so I'm looking for things that I can show up to alone. And this is a very common thing that I'm sure many of you older guys who are single are experiencing, which is as you get older, just naturally your social circle is going to shrink because people are going to get paired up, they're going to get married, they're going to be having kids, and they're just going to have less time to be able to, less time to share, with their friends. And it's a very, very common problem. And one of the issues that guys have is that they do actually rely on this to meet women. If you've come from, a more secular background, or you're not as, hardcore religious, depending on also your denomination, of course, maybe you go out and you've gone out, to bars, to clubs, partying, and that's where you used to meet women. And as friends have paired off and settled down, you're kind of left a little bit stuck, which is, I think, is probably the situation with this gentleman. Now, the key thing to realize here, and there's two things you really need to think about when it comes to meeting women. Number one, what kind of women do you want to meet? That's the first thing. And I'm glad you're enjoying this, nevermarrieddating.com. Appreciate that comment. And yeah, anybody else have any comments, please drop them. I want to respond to you guys. I want to make this as interactive as possible so I can best serve you and help you all. So the first thing, is to think about what kind of women you want, because that is going to dictate the places that you go to meet women. Okay. This guy has the right attitude that he wants to go out alone to meet people. And that is something that I actively recommend to my clients, because it's generally harder And by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you're actually going to be in a much better position to actually meet people. Okay. Because when you're going out with friends, often you can get into a little bit of, a rut. You can settle into just talking to your friends. You can just decide to stick with them and not actually go out and talk to new people, which is ultimately how you're going to meet more women. So the first thing to think about is, yeah, as I say, what kind of women do you want to meet? And the second is you want to think about looking at these in terms of network effects. Okay. When you're going to locations to build out a social network, to meet women, you're not actually going to those locations to meet women that time. Now, yes, hopefully that does happen, right? Hopefully you go there and you meet the woman of your dreams. But in reality, it doesn't normally work like that. The way that you want to be viewing building out a social network is that you want to be making friends and making connections, which mean in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, you're going to keep meeting new women. So what do I mean by that? Well, birds of a feather flock together, right? So if you're going to a specific location, this guy I'm going to assume is Christian, maybe one of the things he could go do as a single guy is he could join some kind of outreach ministry. It's a very simple thing to do, requires a time commitment. But when you're going there, you're not actually going there to hit on the women who are there. You're going there to make friends and make connections. That means the next month after you've built this friendship, they're then going to invite you to maybe a party they're hosting, or maybe they're going to invite you to a social event that they're going to. And in those locations, you're then going to have more opportunities with more women. And this goes for making male friends as well, because especially at this guy's age, at 31, most of the guys that he's going to connect with are going to be married or are going to be in relationships. It's just a reality. By the time most people are in their 30s, they tend to be more in relationships. And they're going to have wives, they're going to have girlfriends, and they're going to have those wives, those girlfriends are going to have friends. And some of those friends are going to be single. Now, another side of this is you want to actually build a good chemistry and a good connection with the friends of people as well, with the friends of women, with the friends of men. The reason for that is because that's also going to provide you a bit more social proof and more social connection. One of the main problems that a lot of guys face, particularly guys with worse social skills, is that if a woman doesn't feel like she's comfortable or happy to introduce you to her friends, that provides enough layer of friction that she doesn't want to go any further. Why? Well, very simple. Women in general, and again, I'm talking in generalizations here, like just for the sake of, clarity and ease. But women in general are a bit more consensus seeking than men. Men tend to be a bit more disagreeable. They tend to be a bit more confident in, conflict in general, although that's one of the issues that a lot of my clients face is they do avoid conflict, particularly with women. But when women are not getting that kind of validation from their social group, that can be a real problem where it can cause enough friction that they don't actually want to continue. So this is why building out a social network and having just good social skills full stop is so important. But to go back to the question, and a few people have joined since I began this diatribe. So I'm just going to repeat the question and kind of tie it all back in because I've gone off on a few tangents, to be quite honest. You'll notice I do that. I do like going off on a tangent. My clients know that very well. That's where a lot of the value comes in. Sometimes I go off somewhere and you get something that you actually needed that you didn't know you needed. So there is that. So the question was, I'm 31 and single. My social circle shrunk, and I need some ideas on how to meet new people and new women. And I said, there's two things you need to do. You need to build out social networks, and you need to think where those women are. So where are these women going to be? Well, without more information about him and what he wants, I can't really say full stop. But I'm going to give some general locations, which are good, particularly for Christian men. And then I'm going to give an example of what one of my former clients did to really kind of tie it all together and give you an actual concrete example of how this works. So generally, I like recommending places where there is going to be some degree of women who are interested in self-improvement. That can be fitness generally, people who are into fitness, particularly in today's day and age where that is, less common or less of a focus than perhaps it was historically. The people who go to those, go to fitness classes, gyms regularly are going to be kind of more forward-looking people. They're going to be people that understand concepts like deferred gratification and things like that. And places like dance studios are great because a lot of guys who are single, they struggle with physical touch. They struggle with expressing themselves sexually. And dance is basically a metaphor for dating. That's basically what dancing is. It's like a physical representation of what dancing is. It's the push, it's the pull, it's the you pull away and then you pull back in. And this can be a really great way to meet women. Now, within dance, for example, there's so many different types of dancing, right? So this is where I refer back to what you want. What are you looking for? What are your skills? What is your personality? It all must come back down to you, okay? Who are you? So obviously on this Q&A, I'm giving generalized advice, as general as I can. But you're actually going to get much more value having some, reflecting on this or having some one-on-one work where you can really get into who you are and what you need. But for example, dance, we can do things from ballroom dancing, which is going to suit, more kind of, I would also say more Northern European style guys. If you're in the South, in America, line dancing can be a really great way to meet. Again, they're going to be more conservative, more Christian women are going to be in those locations as well. It's actually where one of my clients met his current girlfriend, was at a line dancing event. If you're looking for a more fiery, more kind of Latina style woman, obviously places like salsa class and bachata are going to be great, but that's going to be much more sexually explicit. And from my experience working with guys, they tend to be less comfortable in those situations. Now, that might be a reason that makes it worth going there, perhaps, but it might also be a reason that you won't actually succeed as well as you'd like in those locations too. So it all comes down to you. Other things that you can do, small groups. They are fantastic places to develop really deep, meaningful connections with Christians, both Christian men and Christian women in those groups. Again, one of my current clients has been connecting with a girl in a social group, in a small group over the past 2 weeks or so. It's maybe not going it tends to go a little bit slower in those locations compared to, for example, obviously using online dating. One of the values of online dating is that you immediately know you're starting on a dating footing, which is really important for a lot of guys. It kind of clears up some of that clarity and you feel a lot more comfortable in being able to express that. And express yourself and bring flirtatiousness, which will lead me to one of my later questions. But small groups are really great places to build out meaningful connections with men as well. And again, it's all going to be Christians, which is really going to give you an opportunity. So these are a couple of off the top of my head locations. I always like to get guys into fitness places. I always like to get them into places where there are going to be Christian women. Now, the other thing that you can obviously do to meet women is to use online dating. And there is nevermarrieddating.com is asking, do you have favorite dating apps that you recommend? Yes, there's 2 dating apps I like recommending, and I think they're by far the best. Number 1 is Hinge. It's the best current dating app. The Bumble system is not so good. Now, if you're looking for Christian women, you have to be very clear in the way that you're expressing yourself in your bio on a secular dating app, but there's plenty of Christians on there, believe me. One of my clients has been on a great date yesterday with a great Christian woman that's going really well. They met on Hinge. Okay. I would say 50, by the way, a lot of guys have a reticence to online dating. And one of the reasons for that is that if you've not got the right profile and you don't have a good kind of understanding of what you're supposed to be doing, you're not messaging well, you don't feel, you don't have a good bio full stop, and you don't feel confident in what you're doing, it can be very, very dejecting, because you can kind of feel like, you're swiping, you get a match and then it doesn't go anywhere. But I would say 50% of my clients actually get into relationships from dating apps. I am not one of these people who kind of one of these black and white people who just thinks dating apps are terrible. For some guys, they're great. For some guys, they don't work as well. Again, it all comes down to you and what works for you. I've got another client that it's just not working within dating apps, but he's doing really well in person. So we dial in on what works, okay? And part of figuring out what works for you is kind of throwing it a bit at the wall and seeing what sticks, So number one is Hinge, I recommend. The other one, which is a really great Christian dating app, is Upwards, which is kind of gaining traction now. Now, there's a lot of other Christian dating apps like Christian Mingle, Catholic Singles, and a couple of others that I forget off the top of my head. I don't recommend those. They tend to be filled with a lot of bots, to be quite honest. And but Upwards is much better for genuine, for genuine connections. Andrew, who's one of my clients, one of my former clients, who's actually allows me to put his name. If you go on my Twitter profile, or if you scroll through my Instagram profile as well, you will see the interview with him that he gave to me very kindly. He met his now fiance on Upwards. Okay, so don't overlook dating apps. They'll be getting married in summer. I'm not exactly sure when, but we're in May, so it's probably in a month or two. And he met his fiance. He'd not been on a date for 6 years, by the way, before working with me. He's now engaged after 6 months of us working together. He met the girl within 6 months, but they got engaged a little bit later. But so they're the two dating apps that I recommend. So back to the question, in terms of where you can go alone to meet people, two great things: fitness classes of any form, dancing classes, and get involved in some kind of small group of ministry. There's a lot more you can do, but they are generally what my preference is for guys to do. But in any situation where you can build genuine connections and you're going to meet kind of a rhythm of people, that means that you can gradually over time build friendship. Because instant connections where you meet a girl in a park, or you meet her at a coffee shop, or wherever else it might be, there's a much higher skill threshold where you have to kind of, there's much more of a time pressure that if you don't get this connection now, you're not going to get it. So you need to have that. It generally has a much higher skill threshold. And I wouldn't recommend, one of the problems guys have when they get into this, this malaise online of how to date, and they fall into you need to be approaching women and all that stuff. It's like, it's very difficult to do. It's a very high skill ceiling on that. And when you're going through that learning curve, if you don't have someone to kind of help you through it and stop you getting dejected as you're doing it, most guys, they try it once or twice, it doesn't work out, and it's just like, man, that sucks, I'm not going to do that again. And I can't blame them. It's hard, it's tricky. Guys make it seem so easy, but it's not. And even the advice you get is generally terrible, to be quite honest. The way that most people approaching is from completely the wrong mindset. You want to be approaching it from just a genuine, curious mindset of, how can I get to know this person better? And if I get to know them well, okay, let's see where it goes, if I like them. You don't want to be approaching 50 women a day or whatever they told. I once had a client tell me he went in a dating program before when he was about 18, 19. And the guy told him he had to approach 50 women a week or something. And then when he didn't do that, because he didn't have time to do it, the guy gaslit him and told him this is why you're not getting success, because you're not doing that. So you got to be very careful of those kind of dating coaches. Unfortunately, they do exist, and there are people that give my job a bad name, which sucks, but is what it is. So I think we tackled that question well enough. And again, if any of you guys have anything you want me to elaborate on, anything you do have questions about, please feel free. Like, I'm thankful for this guy on Twitter who is asking a few questions. Hopefully the YouTube questions come up here. I am using a streaming platform. This is my first time doing this. So I don't know, maybe some of you guys are messaging on YouTube and it's just not coming up here. I don't know. Instagram is separate, but I've got that up. There's only 2 people watching on Instagram anyway. But I do have that up so I can see those questions. I'm going to have a sip of my coffee while I take a breath. So the second question I got, and this was DM'd to me on Twitter, was a guy asked, Jack, there's a girl at my church who I had a crush on, but when I tried to move towards a relationship, she rejected me. What happened afterwards shocked me because there's been a rift in my friendship group. It's put me off meeting women at church. What should I do? Now, I don't know anything about this situation based beyond what he's told me here. But the first thing you really need to be asking yourself if you're in this situation is, why did this cause a rift? Because that means something happened which was either uncomfortable for the woman, or, there is always the potential that she's a bad woman who's, spreading rumors and she's dealing with her own problems. But my experience is that, those kind of red pill fears, they're much more in your head than in reality. I actually don't know of a single client this has happened to me ever in the 4 years that I've been doing this, when they've been approaching women, connecting with women in situations. I've never known a woman spread false gossip like that. What has happened, and what I think is probably more likely to have happened in this situation, is that you overstepped some boundary in some regards, where when she did reject you, as you put it, and you didn't move forward towards that relationship that you desired, you may have acted out. Perhaps you treated her badly, you got offended and you got upset. And in doing that, what that shows is that you weren't actually respecting her as an individual, and you weren't respecting her boundaries and her desires within this relationship setting, this dating setting. Because as a Christian, but just as a man and just as a good person in general, we always have to treat women as individuals who have their own desires. So it kind of sounds crazy that I have to explain this, but guys actually don't realize that they do this, and I'll talk about why in a mindset way in a moment. That, like, you have to be able to treat women as individual. And this comes down to even the way that this question was phrased to me. Is the first sentence was, Jack, there's a girl at church I had a crush on. So what that tells me is there is a mentality. This is a girl at church. She's not almost a whole fully fledged person to you. She's not, I mean, I can assume you don't want to use her name, so maybe I'm being a bit too harsh here, to be quite honest. But this is a mentality shift I see, a mentality problem I see a lot in my clients. Where when we're dating someone, it's a girl we're dating. She's someone I'm dating. She's this girl from church, this girl from, the gym. And they don't use her name, right? It's not, oh, her name's Clarissa. Her name's Emily. Her name's, I don't know. I nearly said Steve then. Hopefully her name's not Steve. What's another woman's name? Her name's, whatever. Her name's whatever it is. And what that shows is actually you're treating her as a person. And when we treat women as women, we treat them as a person in these kind of settings at church, when we're approaching them, when we're connecting them, wherever it might be, then we can respect them, and we're saying, you're you. Okay, you're you. And if you don't want to move forward with me, that's okay, because I respect you and I respect what you want to do in this situation. And this comes down to the way that people, and by the way, women cannot do this too. This comes down to, for example, the respect that you have when something doesn't work out, and that's what happened here. But actually, Andrew is another great example of this. He had a situation where before he met his now fiance, he was dating 2 girls at once. One of them turned out to be his fiance, and they'd only been on 2 or 3 dates, right, in the beginning stages. I'm someone who doesn't mind that, as long as you're upfront and open. And when it gets to a point where you need to actually move forward and take a choice, make a choice, then you you explain to that person. Until there's a commitment of exclusivity, you are just dating, and there is, and you can judge whether you're okay with this. And there is an element of, you don't have to become exclusive before acting like they're your girlfriend if you want to make it work. But if you've been on one date with someone, you don't have to not go on dates with other people at that point, in my opinion. 2 or 3 dates in, you have to make a decision. But anyway, he'd been on 3 dates with about 2 girls at about the same time, and it became very clear that his now fiance, he just got on better with. He liked the other girl, they had good chemistry, but there was something not quite there. And the other girl, his now fiance, he obviously preferred for whatever reason. And when it came to actually closing that off with the other girl, he didn't just stop messaging her, he didn't ghost her, he didn't just, kind of leave it at that. He reached out to her and he told her, I think they even met on a date. I forget the details now. They went for a date and said, look, I really like you. I think it's great, but I just don't see this going any further. But I really appreciate, getting to know you. And I really hope that you get something out of this and you're able to meet the right person for you. I think you will, but I'm not sure I'm that person. And in doing so, she respected him more. Right? She's like, I appreciate that. I appreciate you closing this off in a mature, healthy way, and allowing us to allow me to move on in a way that doesn't make me feel bad, in a way that doesn't make me feel like what went wrong. I'm questioning what's wrong with me. Is there something wrong with me? And by being a gentleman in that way and respecting her as an individual, he actually gave her the platform to move on and actually find someone better, easier. Right? And I think what the problem here, and that what caused the friendship rift, is that you probably got a little bit upset in that moment. And in some ways it's understandable, like it sucks, having someone, getting rejected, not getting what we want from something, it hurts, especially if you're not having that much dating success. You're probably putting a bit too much onus on that as well. So in terms of like, it's putting you off meeting women at church, this is one of the problems of meeting women within your social group in general, and why I recommend to my clients of pushing out of their social group until they've built up the skill set and the ability to feel the way they're feeling. I'm trying not to give away too much here, but they feel the way they're feeling and move through situations in a way that's mature and not be emotionally responding subconsciously to what's happening, which is a big problem that nearly all men have. Something all people have. We all have emotions. We're all feeling emotions throughout our day-to-day life. And it's how we respond to those emotions that subconsciously that actually causes a lot of issues for us. And that's why, generally I don't recommend meeting women at your church or in your social groups until you've developed a skill set to do this. Now, one of my current clients is actually in that situation. He's internalized the lessons I've taught in a way that is phenomenal. He's building really great connections everywhere he goes. He's actually built out 4 kind of real, genuine new social groups in the time we've worked together over the past 6 months. And in one of those groups that he's built in that time, there's a girl he really likes who had a boyfriend, and she just broke up with her boyfriend. Now, for him, based on everything we've gone through, I know that he has the skill set and the ability to navigate that situation with a bit of advice with me and a bit of hand holding. I'm helping him through that, but that will give him the best chance to do this in a way that won't cause problems. But if you don't have those skills yet, I just generally don't recommend meeting women at your church and in your congregation within your social set groups because of that potential downside. There is real social consequences to getting this wrong. If you cause rifts, you make women feel uncomfortable, that can follow you around, particularly in a church, particularly in the culture that we have in some churches today, where, even without the culture, if there's wrong ways to do this, and there's full stop. If you are making women feel uncomfortable, then you're doing something wrong, and that's not a good thing. And that means you need to change. So what he should do, what would I recommend this guy to do? Well, it's kind of what I talked about before in the previous questions. Build out new social networks in new situations where you don't have pre-existing social networks. And more importantly, develop the self-awareness and the skills that means that you can really and genuinely emotionally connect with women. Because when you're fully present, you're fully emotionally connecting, you won't do the kind of things that lead to this kind of situation. Or if you do, you'll catch yourself and you'll be mature enough and able to deal with conflict enough that you'll be able to go and apologize and make things right as well. Because we all, do make mistakes from time to time. And being able to actually face and take responsibility for that takes a level of humility that as Christians we should have, but don't always practice, unfortunately. So that's what I'd recommend to him. And again, guys, if you have any questions, anything you want me to pick up on, maybe, I've gone off on a few little tangents here and there. Is there anything you'd like me to explain more? Please leave a comment. Please ask some questions. Let's try and make this engaging. I know this is the first time I've done this. I want to really create this kind of engaging vibe where it's very much more of a two-way conversation as much as it is me just monologuing, even though I can talk for days, believe me. Don't worry about that. I can talk, but but it's still nice. I want to create that community. As I say, this is part of a shift in my focus to be more service-minded. I want to try and serve you in the best ways that I can. And the way that I can best serve you is telling me what you want me to answer. What do you want to know? Let me know. And yeah, maybe you don't want to put your name to it. That's fine. DM me in the future, like these guys have. Email me, Jack Peach at dynasticdatingsystem.com. You can email me there. And if you want, by the way, part of this service, if you want more free advice from me and kind of a more cohesive, less of me spitballing on the top of my head, much more of a more well thought out, put together training and things like that, I do have free guides, free trainings. I believe I've put them in the description box here. Please feel free to download those. If they're not in the description box, again, it's my first time doing this. I don't quite know how this stuff works. I'm just kind of putting it together and seeing seeing how it goes. They are all in my bio, so you can get those. And that can really help you meet more women, connect with women, and ultimately get into a relationship which leads to marriage, which is, I'm sure, your ultimate goal. And it's certainly my ultimate goal for you guys. Like, I want you guys to get married. Like, a good marriage glorifies God. And this is the one way that, like, I can use my gifts to actually serve God's kingdom. And that's the direction I'm moving in. And yeah, just thank you all for being here anyway. So the last question I got that I was emailed, and I think this is an important one and a tricky one, where this guy says, Jack, you often talk about the importance of bringing sexual chemistry. I struggle with how to implement this without falling into sin, because my own writing getting me here. I struggle without falling into sin, and I don't understand exactly how to do it. And I think this is actually one of the key challenges that the Christian church is facing. Before I answer this question, Leo has asked me, how do we get a one-on-one consult with me? You can DM me for a one-on-one consult. Just let me know. You can email me and we can chat about whether that makes sense for you. I do offer free consultations for guys, a free path to commitment strategy session where we can identify these things. So if you want one of them, just DM me. Just DM me on Twitter, you're on YouTube. So you contact me on YouTube, leave a message, or can you even DM on YouTube? I don't even know. Otherwise, email me, jackpeach@dynasticdatingsystem.com. If you email me there, we can sort that out. Yeah, cool. Appreciate that comment, Leo. Really appreciate that. So, and for anybody else who would like to know that. So how to balance bringing sexual chemistry without falling into sin? It's a great question, by the way, whoever asked this. So this is one of the key challenges that I see the church facing today, where we've got to the point where we've kind of stripped away what it means to be a man. The way the church talks about masculinity in general is a problem for me, and dating especially, though. And there's this idea that because men are sexual beings, that we have sexual desires, that is inherently sinful. Now, obviously, we are all sinful. We all fall into sin, me included. Believe me, one of the reasons why I'm trying to be more service minded is because I've made some terrible mistakes in my life that have humbled me, and they've made me a much more humble person than I used to be. And that's a good thing. It's how God used my sin to shape me. But sexual desire is not sinful. Okay. God gave us sexual desire to go, be fruitful, and multiply. To do that, we are living in accordance with God's will, but only within the right framework. Okay. And again, God lays this out within the Bible. And just so people are clear, like, I am a Baptist, but I work with Catholics, I work with Christians. I have a different perspective on denominations, where I basically see all denominations as being equal and just ways for God to cast his net wider to capture more Christians. As in, some people resonate more with Catholic teachings, some people resonate more with Protestant teachings and all the various denominations within that. But as long as they're not like, and the slight variation, I think, as long as you believe in Christ and that you believe he is your savior and that you try and live a life in accordance with what he desires, I don't really care what denomination you are. And I don't think God does either, personally. And this is just a personal opinion. I will happily put that out there. I just see it as his way of capturing more people. Just wanted to put that out there. But I am a Baptist. I forgot what my point was that before I went on that tangent. But yeah, anyway, we are inherently sinful, but sexual desire in and of itself is not sinful. Okay, so when you are, in fact, it's a necessary component to get married. So we have to do it within the right confines and the right strictures, the scriptural way that God lays down for us. And God never says that sex is bad. It says immorality around sex is bad. Casual sex, lust. And the way that I define lust is not the same as sexual desire. Okay? Lust is when you do not respect another person and you act out on your sexual desires without the consent. I don't want to use that word because the modern thing, but without respecting that person's boundaries. So if they don't feel that sexual chemistry back and then you keep pushing, then you're falling into lust and not sexual desire. And then it becomes sinful, right? So actually bringing sexual chemistry in and of itself is not a problem. Okay. And there are right ways to do this and there are wrong ways to do this. So the wrong way would be what I just described, not respecting someone, not respecting what they want, and just kind of seeing women as a means to an end. She is the way that I can get my sexual desires met. She is the way that I can, I can get married. I can have a family, right? Instead of seeing her, and this is another problem, and you talked with someone yesterday about this, like where there can be a mentality of like, I want to have a family. I want to have kids. And to get kids, I need to get married. And to get married, I need a woman. And to need a woman, I need to date. Where what you're actually doing, if you're dating a woman in that process, you're not focusing on her. You're not respecting her. You're seeing what she can do for you, which is she is your pathway to a family, or she's your pathway to feeling better about yourself, or whatever it might be. And this is a real bad false mindset and that will also allow you to fall into sin as well, where what you really need to be doing is understanding that as long as I'm respecting this person, as long as they're comfortable with what's happening, and as long as we are both just sexually attracted towards each other, and we're allowing that energy, because it comes down to an energy and a vibe between the two of you. It's not about actions. Okay. And as long as you can communicate that sexual chemistry and that sexual energy and that sexual vibe between the two of you, she is then going to view you in a way that makes her think this is someone that could be a potential husband. Okay. If you don't ever do that, you don't ever bring that, she's never going to view you in that way. But the key and the challenge is to bring that without slipping into sinful behaviors. And that's where the real challenge lies. And that's where self-control and discipline do come in during this date, during the dating process. And that is really the challenge. And that's the balancing act. And a lot of guys, particularly if you've been raised in a Christian setting, are honestly suffering with a bit of sexual repression, to be quite honest, where they believe that even just by being sexually attracted to a woman, that is a problem and that is sinful, which is not the case. That's not the case. We have a whole chapter on the Bible talking about sexual intimacy within a marriage setting. It's the Song of Solomon. It's within a marital setting and with a pre-covenant, the Old Testament style of marriage, admittedly, but it just shows that sex, sexual desire, and feeling sexual intimacy is not sinful. It's only if you slip over that. And again, being able to walk that path and being able to become comfortable enough with your sexual energy and being able to be comfortable expressing and sharing that sexual energy in the right way, I think is actually more of the challenge, at least in my experience with my clients. So, there are things that you can do to do this, using things like physical touch, again, in the right way. I'm actually going to be releasing a YouTube video. I've recorded it. I just need to edit it with my terrible editing skills. So, but I will be releasing that probably early next week, on how you can use, for example, physical touch to build intimacy on dates. So keep an eye out for that. I won't repeat myself here. But things like physical touch, things like eye contact, things like being flirtatious, it's not bad. It's not wrong. In fact, it's necessary. God wants us to get married. And God understands that before we get married, we have to date someone. We have to get to know them. We have to feel sexually attracted to them to even want to get to that point. And he understands that, and he's okay with that as long as we then don't slip off into, as I say, things I mentioned earlier, casual sex and the like. So that's really how you balance that, where it's all about the feeling and not the acts. And you don't want to focus in on that too much. And if you're struggling to do that, it will probably point to some element of sexual repression, or you need just a little bit of, some structure. A big thing I see in my clients is getting kind of having a framework to follow can be so valuable, because it just stops you second guessing yourself and kind of getting in your head and getting, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. Like, what should I do here? What should I do there? And, if you have a framework that's been explained to you and you also understand why that's okay and why that's good. So you're not just blindly following, right? This is a problem with following stuff online and following dating advice where you're not got someone to talk to, or someone who doesn't have a cohesive worldview or the same worldview as you, which is a real key. There's not many people doing what I'm doing, right? Which is teaching guys how to date in an aligned Christian way. There's plenty of women doing it. There's not many men, for whatever reason. And, if you have that to follow where you understand it and you feel good doing it, that's really key. Because if you follow some of these other, if you follow general online dating advice, red pill stuff I'm trying to move away from, or even if you feel good with following the conventional dating advice, that dating advice, it probably doesn't work very well. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it, she will pick up on that. She'll feel it. When you don't feel comfortable with what you're doing, she will also not feel comfortable with you, right? And that can sabotage dates as well and sabotage connections. So having something fully aligned that you feel comfortable with, that you understand, why it's good, you have the arguments worked out in your head. Watching this, if you enjoy my content, you're probably quite a logical, intelligent man. And logical, intelligent guys, one of the reasons why my program works so well for smart guys is because it's all laid out within a structured way that makes sense to logical guys. And when you can make sense of it in your head, then you can really actually work through it and get success in a way that is a challenge if you haven't. If you try and do something without understanding why, and you're an intelligent guy, it just won't sit right. You can, some of you probably watching this and you probably kind of resonate what I'm saying. I tried that advice from that guy, but I didn't know why, and it just didn't feel comfortable, and then it didn't work. And then you kind of feel like, oh, I just give up on it, right? Because it didn't work. But actually, the advice might still be good. But because you don't have the cohesive framework around that advice, you haven't been able to get over your own internal obstacles. And you end up getting in your own way there as well, which can be a real challenge. It's something to overcome. Yeah, so I've answered the 3 questions that I was given. By the way, thank you so much for all the guys who answered, who did take the time to post these questions to me and message them to me. 2 were DM to me and 1 was sent on email. If you guys have any questions from this and you didn't want to ask in the chat because you didn't want to put your name to it, you don't want people to see that. I get it, 100% get it. Please feel free to DM me. Please feel free to email me. I am going to be running these every week in this time slot. Okay, the exact same time, which I believe is 9 p.m. EST on a Thursday. It's 8 a.m. for me on a Friday. I'm going to be doing this every week. So I would love for you guys to come and join me every week here. And let's, like I say, I really want to create a movement which changes the way that people talk about dating in the Christian church. Like, I think there is really a gaping hole for this kind of content. Like, I really do believe that, where, away from the red pill BS, which a lot of Christian men are, falling into the trap of, because, it makes sense. And they're just kind of filling and occupying a void that the conventional Christian dating advice is leaving, because that doesn't work either. And I'm really going to try and make this a movement, this third way, this dynastic dating movement, to try and change the way that Christian men are able to understand and approach dating. And I hope by doing this, I won't just help you guys watching this, but guys in the future and guys who find this, and we can create, something around this that is going to just move the church forward and help the church, help more men get married. I was talking with a pastor recently, and he told me this is the major challenge in his church. There's so many 25 to 30-year-olds who are struggling with dating, and he doesn't know how to do it. And he just, he probably should have got some more advice from me so he can help solve his church. But that's another question. But this is something that I've seen in my church. I see it in my old church in Thailand as well, when I was living in Thailand. And I just know that from talking to my clients and talking to other guys, that this is a key issue. And if it's not resolved, the church is only going to get weaker, unfortunately. And none of us want that. So yeah, this is why I'm doing this. I want to thank you all for joining me. Whether you join me on YouTube, whether you join me on Twitter, a couple of guys on Instagram as well. Instagram is my smallest platform, which I'm trying to grow now. If you are on Instagram and you're seeing this, please give me a follow. Or if you guys are on Instagram and you're not following me there, please give me a follow there. I'm posting different kinds of content there than I am on Twitter and on my YouTube, obviously. And it's a better platform, to be quite honest. Twitter nowadays is just, just to give an example, and this is me just talking, right? I put out a tweet on Twitter. I've got 31,000, I think, followers, and like maybe 1,000 people will see it. I then screenshot that tweet and put it on Instagram, and I'll get like minimum 2,000, and I've had 30,000 people see it. And I've got 200 followers on Instagram. Twitter's just broken as a platform from a creator's perspective nowadays, unfortunately. Which is one of the shames of the takeover that's happened. I was very optimistic about it, but it's just a shame. So my efforts are obviously going to be less on there nowadays as a result. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to be doing this same time every week. It's going to be recorded. I don't know if it will stay on Instagram or stay on Twitter. I'm not sure how that works, but YouTube, it will be recorded on. So if you want to recatch it or rewind it, or go to one specific thing I talked about, you can find it there. And in the future, if you can't make the live program, it will also be recorded on my YouTube as well. But thank you everyone who joined in. Thank you for the questions I got. I really appreciate it, and I hope this has been valuable for you all. So I just want to say God bless you all, and I'll speak to you very soon. Jack out.